So we're going to get that y alone. So remove this 2x over. But notice that there's that negative in front of the y. We have to get rid of that as well. So this is going to be a negative 2x plus 5 right now. But then I want to get rid of that negative 1. So I'm going to divide by negative 1. So I'm going to divide all of those by negative 1. This will become a positive 2x and then minus 5. We did this earlier in the chapter, so hopefully graphing is coming back around again. It's probably not, hopefully, too bad right now. So we're going to begin this graph at what point? Where's this beginning? Negative 5. Yep, so negative 5 on the y-axis here. And then from there, I'm going to do my slope, which is 2. So I'm going to put that as 2 over 1. Up 2 over 1. Up 2 over 1. So then there's our line. So that's supposed to be a review. So hopefully that was, that was kind of a tougher, getting the y alone. There's 2 steps there with that. Hopefully most of them aren't like that for you guys. We're going to talk today about graphing this when instead of the equal sign, we're going to have an inequality. So the greater than or less than symbol. So rather than the equal sign, rather than just a regular line, we're going to have an inequality. So that's what makes today different. So linear inequalities. So what makes this different is, if you guys recall, when we put inequalities on the number line, remember the open versus closed circles? Hopefully you guys recall that. Circle doesn't want to color in there. So open and closed circles. Now we're going to add another piece to that. So when we want to express that using a line, we're not going to do like open and closed circles on the graph. We're going to do instead, we're going to use a solid and a dotted line. Which one would you think the solid line would be? Left or right? What do you guys think? Solid line?
Right.
I think the right one. Because it's filled in, we're going to use a solid line for this. Now it looks totally like some sort of weird cartoon face. So it's going to be a solid line for those types of inequalities. Versus this one's just going to be a dotted or like a dashed line. So it's not going to be solid. It's going to show that that line is kind of a boundary, but it doesn't work in that spot. So the solid line, if it's on the line, it works. Versus this one on the line is not a solution. So we're going to do a dotted versus a solid line today. So that's going to be one difference. The other difference is we're actually going to color half of the graph. And we're going to color the graph, and the color, or like a lot of times I tell students to use like highlighters, where the coloring is going to be is where the solutions are going to be. So what we're going to do is we're going to test the side of the graph. So we're going to test a point on one side of the graph. Make sure you guys are taking good notes. So let's remind you that tomorrow you guys are going to do a notes quiz. So we're going to test a point on one side of the graph. Once we do that, so it'd be like if I was saying that I'm going to divide the room in half. If one side of the room gets the point right, you guys all get the credit, or you get a piece of candy or something. But if they get it wrong, the other side gets the point. So it's like you guys are in teams. So if I said, hey Isaac, what's the answer to this one? If he got it right, his whole side wins. If he gets it wrong, the other side wins. That's kind of the idea with this point. So we're going to test a point on one side of the graph. If the point works, we're going to say all the points around it work. If the point doesn't work, that means the other side of the line is where the points work, and we're going to color that side. So we're going to color or shade the side of the graph that works. And I'll show you guys what I mean. Color or shade the side of the graph that works. And I'll show you guys what I mean by that. So we're going to look at example 1 and use that as our example. We're kind of testing this and figuring this out. And then we'll do a couple of these problems and we'll do some whiteboards with them. Everyone have that written down so far here? So we're going to look at example 1. We're going to graph it like we normally would, but we have to remember the two different types of lines, and then we also have to remember this part of it, which is going to be new for you guys. So we're going to graph this line. Now before I start, I'm going to think a little bit ahead. Is this going to be a solid or a dotted line? Look at the type of inequality.
Dotted.
This is going to be a dotted line. So since it's the greater than or less than line, we're going to do a dotted line. So it's not going to be solid this time. I have to graph it like I normally would. So I'm still going to begin at -6. And I'm going to move using my slope, which is 2 over 1. And this one's nice because it's already in slope-intercept form. So we're going to begin at -6 and then move using 2 over 1. Sorry, I guess my graph is a little bit big down here. So we'll go down to -6. And then I'm going to move using 2 over 1. Now this one, I probably don't even really need to draw a line. This is a pretty good dotted line. I also have technology, so I can make it like an extra pretty dotted line here. So a dotted line probably looks solid to you guys, but so it should be dotted. You don't even have to, like, you can kind of just space it out. If you forget and make it solid, you can always erase, or you can write a little note to me and say, hey, this is supposed to be a dotted line, totally forgot, not a big deal. But we're not done now. We need to color half of the graph. So this is the new piece of it that we have to talk about. So this is the part where I say, this whole side of the room, you guys are in a team. If you get the answer right, everyone gets it right, versus if you get it wrong, the other side gets like the points or whatever it happens to be. So we're going to test a point. The line is our dividing line. So this is cutting the sides of the two parts. So we want to pick something on one side of the line that will allow us to test that point and check and see if it works. Now, I will suggest you pick an easy point. Anyone have a suggestion for an easy point? What's a really easy point on the graph? Where both numbers are the same, they're kind of nice. What's it? 0, 0. Let's test 0, 0. Now 0, 0 is on the upper half of this graph. So we're going to check and see, does 0, 0 work in this equation? And if it does, we're going to shade that half of the graph. And if it doesn't, we'll shade the other side. So this is our person who's answering the question. We're seeing if they're right or wrong. We're going to test that. Now when I say we're going to test that, we're putting it back into this equation to see if it works. So we're putting 0, 0 back in here. The reason I like 0, 0 so much is because it's really easy that we don't get the two mixed up. Like, which one's 0? Well, they both are, so I can just put zeros in. 0 is less than 2 times 0 minus 6. 0 is less than 0 minus 6. 0 is less than negative 6. Is that true? Is negative 6 bigger than 0? No. So this does not work. This is a no. So that means that point is wrong. So that means everything on that side of the line is wrong. So everything over here does not work. That means I'm going to shade this other side of the graph. So this is a time where highlighters are kind of nice. I have a bunch of highlighters I can grab for you guys. But we're going to color over here. So we're coloring. So if you guys have highlighters, otherwise, like I said, I have a bunch. Also these weird markers or like highlighters that are called gel like highlighters, and they're like almost like crayons. So the ones that are like crayons, your paper gets a little sticky with them. But if anyone wants highlighters, you're going to eventually want them because there's going to be more than one color. So we ended up coloring. So that means if I checked any points in this part of the graph, they would work. So the part I colored in, any points in that part, so if I checked 10, negative 10, that point should work in my equation. So anything on that side of the graph should work. Okay, questions there? All right, this next equation is a little bit trickier. We'll take a break after this one, but this next equation, the y isn't alone. So what do we need to do to get y alone? Yep, we're going to divide by negative 2. However, when we divide by a negative, does anyone remember what makes inequalities a little bit tougher? Yep. Yeah, we're going to have to flip. We're going to flip the inequality because we divided by a negative. So the inequality changes directions, and this becomes a negative 5x. Where does this graph begin, you guys?
0.
Yeah, so there is no b, so this one's going to begin at 0. So we're going to begin it at 0, put a dot at 0. And then our slope is a negative 5 over 1. So I'm going to, nice negative downhill slope, I'm going to go down 5 and over 1. And I can also go back up 5 and back 1. Did you guys notice what kind of line this one was?
It's
Yeah, so yeah, it's a solid all the way through. So solid line, it doesn't have to have the dotted part of it. So it's just going to be a solid line. So just a downhill slope, solid line. But again, I'm still not done yet. Once I get that line, now we have to pick a test point. But I'm going to warn you guys, this time we can't use 0, 0. Anyone think they know why we can't use 0, 0? That's where it starts. It goes right through that point. So if that point's going to work on that line, but I can't tell which half of the graph is correct. It'd be like picking me as the teacher to be your person that tells you guys if you win or lose the point. That really wouldn't be fair. Like I can't be on like both teams. So I have to choose one side or the other. So we have to pick something on one side of the line or another. What would be an easy point to pick? Yeah. You want to do 1, negative 5? You can do that. I might, well actually, 1, negative 5 goes through the line as well. So we can't use that.
You gotta do 1, 1.
I would pick something more like 1, 1. Again, yes, we want to stay away from the line. But 1, 1's kind of nice because it's clearly on one side of the line, But again, they're both the same number, and it really makes it easier to like make sure I'm not getting confused about. So we're going to test 1, 1 because both of the variables again are the same number. And I know this is weird, and if it's just different, we haven't learned this before. So if you're like feeling like not quite getting it yet, we'll practice this. It should be 1, 1. And when we go to test it, we can put it back in the original equation or the new one. It doesn't matter which one you want to put it in. Let's just put it in here. So 1 is less than or equal to negative 5 times 1. 1 is less than or equal to negative 5. Is that true? It's trying to eat the night. No. So again, that didn't work again. We're like, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. We're always picking the one that doesn't work. That one doesn't work. So that means I'm going to shade on this other half of the graph. So I'm shading over here. And it's the line that we're using that's our like boundary line. All right, so if you guys could grab whiteboard marker or something to erase with, please.